Hey everybody, it's Bruno. If you want to be our next guest on MB, click on the Be My Next Guest link below. Hope you enjoy this episode, and I'm looking forward to hearing from you.
That's right. What's up, you sucker? What you looking at?
Yeah, Bruno, I'll tell you, I've never been a kind of a. I find with the larger firms, it's more kind of. My idea was federal government oriented, the little cubicles where you don't have that personal relationship with the owner of the company, and to me it was important to deal with the individual, the owner, hands on. So that was primarily my reason, and I wasn't too keen on the large corporations in terms of real estate, and that was, and it was unique to me. I mean, a lot of my associates are out there with the Royal Pages, Coldwell Bankers, Remaxes, and that's fine. But I just for me, I didn't find that worked, and local Ottawa and it was more my thing.
Okay.
The early 80s, mid 80s, where the interest rates got to a point where it was exaggerated, and it was sad to see because if your mortgage happened to come due at that particular time and you were paying 5 or 6%, you now have skyrocketed to 23, 24%. So a lot of people lost homes back in the 80s, which was quite sad to see. I mean, it came to a point where we would buy the houses depending on whether they would include the washer, dryer, and appliances. So yeah, that wasn't a good time in the Ottawa market. I mean, still did business, but again, the high interest rates really were an obstacle in buying a house back then, for sure.
So I'm going to ask this to Matthew, because Matthew, you're nowhere near our age. Could you ever imagine having to sell a home where the buyer needed financing and the best rate you can get them was 17 or 18%?
That's funny. I was just talking about that with another realtor friend of mine. It's just mind blowing to me, right? Because even so, I have no recollection of those times. So, in 17% on a mortgage of like $480,000, like your monthly payments are either astronomical. And like, well, I mean, forget about buying a house today. That's insane. I know that I guess the purchase price would have been lower, a little bit lower back then, but still, like, it would have been unaffordable for most of the population.
Opinions on that, Bruno? I think it is a little bit low in terms of if you can get a mortgage right now. I mean, I heard, I was reading an article actually. It's funny, in one of the Asian countries, they actually have a negative interest rate where they don't actually pay you, but there's no interest. So your principal payment is your payment. There's no interest. So I don't know if that's not a good thing, but I mean, whether it should be 10% or not, I think there's a happy medium in there somewhere. I'm not quite certain what it is, but I do think that the mortgage rates are I think exaggerated low. I mean, if that's a terminology. So. And I don't believe that's good for the market.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't.
Why do you see it as being not good?
Yeah, it gives people a false impression of what they can actually afford, Bruno. I think that, you see people out there buying $1 million houses because the interest rate's at 2.5%. Well, you have no business buying that $1 million house if you're betting that your 2.5% is gonna go for the 25-year term of your mortgage or so that kind of situation. So I don't think it's healthy for the market to have those exaggerated low interest rates.
Mm-hmm. Some of the, I guess, younger buyers' fears. Do they not even think of interest rate in your? Is it more their down payment they're worried about?
It's more so the down payment. Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny you mention that because I also just read an article about how a lot of the down payment is coming from the older generation. Their parents are providing a lot of the down payment, and that's what I encounter a lot of the time, where I'll have a buyer who's in the 24, 25, 26 range. And I communicate with their mortgage person, or they're using my mortgage person, and I inquire like, oh, how healthy is your down payment? They go, oh, well, half of it's coming from my parents, and I encounter that a lot. But if they don't have that, well, then they're probably not going to make the 20%, and in turn they have to pay the CMHC insurance, so which tax onto their monthly payment. When it all comes down to the numbers, yes, I do think they are very surprised when they see how high the number will be a month. It might not be as high as maybe their rent if they're, if they're living downtown Ottawa, if they're paying $2,200-$2,300 in rent. When in the end you're not going to own anything. At least in this case, if you are paying $1,600, $1,700, $1,800 a month, to utilities, to your mortgage, to this, to that. At least at the end of the day, it's your house. You'll own a piece of property and you can invest in it and maybe resell it for a profit one day.
Well, you know what? That's pretty much all the time we have for this episode today. Thank you for tuning in with us, and you know what? Make sure you subscribe to our Megapix Media channel so you will never miss an episode. And also, you can follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook, Instagram. We have content almost every day. So thank you very much for joining us. I'll see you guys soon.